Welcome back to another episode of the Pandemic Job Hunt. This podcast aims to break down key techniques and to uncover the industry secrets to help you stand out in getting a job during this once-in-a-lifetime pandemic we are living in. And I am your host, Andrew Barry. In this episode, I had the pleasure of having a conversation with Meri Ghazaryan. She is the National Manager of Employer Relations at Lighthouse Labs. Lighthouse Labs is a Canadian-based bootcamp school offering 3-month-long courses for web development and data science. In the chat I had with Meri, we discussed why would someone go through a bootcamp, the keys to success for someone transitioning into tech, and how would a bootcamp grad navigate their career change in the pandemic. Full disclosure, I do work for Lighthouse Labs, and at the time of this recording, I still do. Nevertheless, I think this episode will be valuable for someone who is thinking about making a career change into tech, and going through a bootcamp might be appealing. Hi, Meri. How are you?
Hi, Andrew. Very well. What about you?
I am doing great. Toronto is super sunny right now, and I took a walk right before I went on this call just to clear my mind. It's great because lately Toronto doesn't have a lot of sun, so it's nice to take a walk sometimes in the bright sun, even if it's still really cold outside. Where are you calling from?
I'm actually in Vancouver, and for the past 2 days, it's been quite cold. Well, I wouldn't compare it to the East Coast, but definitely -3 feels like -7 for us. So quite chilly here, but I enjoy it because it's very sunny and love to walk.
All right, so let's get into the topic of boot camps. I've noticed in the past 3 to 5 years, boot camps have been growing around the world. There's companies popping up in Canada, in the States, or in Southeast Asia, all around the world. And I've also noticed more and more of my friends and my peers are deciding, you know what, maybe I will take a step into the boot camp world and really go into a 3-month program just to those upskill some sort of technology skills so I can transition into a new career or just to learn something new. Because boot camps are, I think, the big proponent of it is very practical. There's a lot of support, and it's in a short time frame where going to a university to learn something new will take like a year or 2 years. A boot camp, you can accomplish the same subjects within 3 months in a very intensive oriented course. So my question is, who is the boot camp for? Like, who is the target audience? Because I've also noticed lately, just from being in the industry and also my peers, a lot of people who go through boot camps are generally folks who have a few years under their belt of experience and working experience, and they're maybe late 20s to early 30s, and they want to transition into a new career. And that's my kind of view of like folks who are deciding to join and go through a boot camp. But what is Lighthouse Labs' take on who is this for?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I'll just jump into a small history of what's been happening in the past few years and especially this year because the reality is changing so quickly and we're just getting acquainted to new norms. We all see opportunities for growth in tech sector, and hiring skilled human capital can be a challenge for many businesses, like from startups to small and medium enterprises. But at the same time, what we're seeing is that unemployment is on its peak for many industries. So, for example, oil and gas, tourism, aviation for sure, and many more. So individuals who are facing numerous challenges to find decent job and income are actually looking into identifying new disciplines or new ways to change their careers. So while the tech industry continues to grow at a very expedited pace, we are all seeing that many startups are emerging, and we are also seeing quite a few career changers who are deciding to go into coding or into data science. And that's why they're kind of joining boot camp. Specifically, I will talk about Lighthouse Labs
Mhm.
to gain those essential coding skills or skills in data science, or
Mhm.
just to understand, taking some part-time courses to understand whether the web development is for them, and etc. etc. So what we're seeing is our students are generally career changers. And in terms of the demographics, we're seeing more and more women joining the boot camp, as well as we're seeing some individuals who are just, out of
Mhm.
high school, 18 years old. They just
Mhm.
decide to take this very intensive and immersive boot camp to jumpstart their careers. But at the same time, the career changers are those who've had quite a few years of experience in different industries, as I mentioned before, in oil and gas, for example, in
Mhm.
aviation, and etc. But at the same time, we do have some individuals who have graduated from with comp sci degrees or with STEM degrees,
Mhm.
also from with engineering background, and they're joining just to get that kind of hands-on experience that
Mhm.
prepares them for the real life, work environment. Especially right now that we're all
Mhm.
remote, Lighthouse Labs gives an opportunity for the online learning model, which
Mhm.
prepares the students to work remotely from wherever they are.
Mhm.
So,
I
hope
think
I captured the question.
you did. And I think what's also just great about these boot camps in general, web dev as well as data science, and how tech focused it is in terms of like getting hands-on experience. You're learning programming, you know how to like use code, and you learn how computers think. I think this is a very essential skill in today's world, especially as we get more and more tech oriented around the world. Understanding how technology is built and how technology works, I think will really help for anyone's career, especially if all these different industries, even though some of them are not doing too well, the successful players in those industries are more and more embracing technology into their workflow, into
Mhm.
their a way they analyze big data. Um, that requires the understanding of technology, that requires programming, and that requires at least the technological point of view of how to tap into that. So I think that's the one of the biggest advantage of these boot camps is you get to be exposed to how computers work and how technologies work from the bare bones, and you get to see that even in data science we learn all these different programming language, but understanding how programming works, you're able to appreciate how a website works, or how like this platform we're having a conversation work. We get to see how the building blocks are broken down. It's like you have the engineering mindset, which I think is quite helpful for anyone in this day and age to upskill and thrive in this digital world now.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
So speaking of folks who are going through boot camp after 3 months of intensive studying and intensive learning, um, what is the best next steps for these folks to do? How does one successfully transition and leverage off their boot camp experience to transition into a new role? Um, I know that at Lighthouse Labs, there is some career services and some career workshops
Mhm.
associated and introduced early on to like get them ready and start to have them think about how tech works. Can you maybe highlight a little bit about what are some of the biggest misconceptions for someone who's like a career changer in Lighthouse Labs uh, when applying into a tech role? Is there some differences in entering a tech industry versus some of the more other industries such as oil and gas or aviation, as you mentioned?
Um, so a very interesting question. And as we all know, these days, many employers are having diversity and inclusiveness strategies.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that career changers are actually considered to be an added benefit because, and our graduates are more productive and competitive. And I can even say that they're innovative.
Mm-hmm.
So they are very creative in terms of identifying some really cool and new solutions or creating new apps. In the last 2 weeks of bootcamp, they're actually working closely within teams to create new applications that may have a long-term life in a few months. And that's why we do have employers also joining us for those demonstrations. But definitely to successfully transition into a tech role, it requires a lot of work. So it's not only to go through the educational process for 12 weeks and, code, or understanding what the technologies and, as you mentioned, what the computers are and etc. What is the front end development, back end, or what is the data analysis and how can we process that data? There's definitely a lot of work that career changers, I would say, or the graduate, they need to start working from the let's say week 5 while they're in the boot camp. And there are quite a few factors to be successful and transition into tech sector and become, more economically self-sufficient.
Mhm.
So I can just let you know that that there are many reports on how Canada, as companies are investing in new technologies, are
Mhm.
investing in new talent, in human capital,
Mhm.
and some on-demand positions today are definitely web development, mobile development, data analytics, and digital marketing. And to
Mhm.
be a successful career changer and getting into the tech world, there's definitely a formula that I usually advise our grads to
Mhm.
follow. It's self-evaluation. What are their interests? What do they want to achieve?
Mhm.
Where do they want their careers to take them, or what is their career path? But at the same time, understanding their options, and understanding their options. Based on what their hard skills are. So basically their previous experience as well as their soft skills and the experience that they had during the boot camp. And also the graduates, they need to kind of understand that everything is going remote right now. 80% of
Mhm.
companies are completely remote, and for the foreseeable future I am anticipating that that will be like that.
Mhm.
So definitely how to be successful when working remotely, because it still requires you to have those transferable and soft skills,
Mhm.
even more so now than before, because when you're not face to face, it's a different story. And definitely researching their career prospects. And that's why career services at Lighthouse Labs, we start from week 5 to educate them on
Mhm.
how they can be successful in their career,
Mhm.
and what can they achieve. And we're working together with them
Mhm.
while they're in the boot camp as well as after they graduate, to make sure that they find meaningful employment and they're
Mhm.
successful.
Would you say uh, the advice you give to someone who is a career changer, who have some years of experience under their belt, um, is it different the advice you give to those uh, folks versus someone that you mentioned earlier, like who is such as like a recent grad out of high school, or someone who right after university decided to join a boot camp and they don't have that many years of experience, maybe 1 year at most? Do you
Mhm.
have different advice for those two different audiences?
I think for those who already have a few years of experience,
Mhm.
I think the most important thing today is to kind of consider your options and to understand that you, at this point, because of the situation and how the tech world is changing, you need to be more flexible and more adaptable.
Mhm.
While with those who don't have experience, they are definitely more flexible and more adaptable because they're
Mhm.
like ready to jumpstart their careers. But
Mhm.
definitely for both audiences, I would say that it's very important how you market yourself.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay. So how you market yourself, and definitely how you need to identify the points, and especially if you don't have much experience in the
Mhm.
discipline, for example, in coding, and you don't have a lot of experience in interviewing or in networking
Mhm.
online. So, and there are definitely some essential steps to build your portfolio. And
Mhm.
I can elaborate on that if you'd like.
Yeah, we will in a bit. I'm really curious about is when it comes to marketing yourself and now marketing yourself in the remote world, the
Mhm.
pandemic world. How has the career services Lighthouse changed their approach in terms of teaching folks or instructing or advising folks on how to market themselves? What's different today versus pre-pandemic?
So, one of the key things that has changed that we are definitely we have transformed our workshops to
Mhm.
meet the demands of the market. So basically, what let's say I would give you an example of the interview workshop that we have.
Mhm.
So previously, we were kind of teaching and supporting the students on how to go through the resume, the interview process, or how to approach employers and how to network and etc. So now
Mhm.
it's a completely different story. We kind of teach them how to be successful while interviewing online. So, how to prepare for video interviewing. And
Mhm.
that's just one of the small examples of what has changed. But definitely, we also talk about like your online brand. And how to build your portfolio and how to market yourself online, which is very critical today. So
Mhm.
they need to. We do have like LinkedIn workshops for our career readiness program that comes after they graduate. We
Mhm.
do have a workshop on how to build your brand,
Mhm.
on how to set your goals, and how to make sure that you're successful in this completely remote
Mhm.
world. Yeah.
How do you build your brand? Since there's so many, especially now, when the pandemic hit, a lot of people got laid off,
Hmm.
who are unemployed now, and I'm sure a lot of students who go through boot camp right now may have been let go from the pandemic and decided to upskill and transition into a new world or a new role after the boot camp. How do you build an online brand to stand out amongst so many other competition out there, especially now when we apply for a job or when I see a new job posting online? uh, you can see the number, for example, on LinkedIn, there's like the max number that you can see is 500. That gets filled up within 2 days. How do you stand out amongst other folks when building this online brand? What is some successful, I guess, um, evidence or key metrics that you've noticed amongst the Lighthouse Labs
Hmm.
students post graduation?
Yeah, for sure. I will start with some essential steps that
Sure.
it's definitely continuously coding and practicing that
Hmm.
helps our students to get jobs faster.
Hmm.
And also participating in hackathons. So that's a part of kind of continuous practice, as
Hmm.
well as like always having your GitHub up to date. So pushing your code as well as because this is your digital resume. So
Hmm.
from our experience, the employers are actually even without looking at the projects that are on
Hmm.
the resumes that are being presented to them,
Hmm.
they are definitely going to the GitHub and they want to see what are your projects and what are your, let's say, open source contributions, right? Or where can they find other projects that to help employers and recruiters to understand that you are committed and you can code, especially if that's completely new discipline for you.
Hmm.
So if you are some of the like I would say successful metrics also are that some of our grads would create their own website.
Hmm.
But for that, they need to make sure that it's polished and it showcases their design and coding skills,
Hmm.
and it shouldn't look amateur. So usually the sites that our grads are creating, they represent their creativity, their personality, and their unique vision. Because today, as you mentioned, there's so many applicants for the same position. But what makes you stand out? They need to
Hmm.
kind of uh, understand and self-educate of what their unique story is, and then based on that choose the name for their website, which is not only appealing but it should be catchy, because that name can stay with them for the whole career, right?
Mm, like
So
their personal brand.
yeah, personal brand for sure. So if you're showcasing your work, definitely very important
Mhm,
to have your contact information there as well.
mhm,
And as you mentioned, having a strong personal brand is very, very critical today.
mhm,
And so the key message or the tagline should be there, and just think about, my advice is like, how would you like to be recognized? So that's
mm,
why you have the key message, be it on LinkedIn, be it on Facebook, be it on other social media platforms, but
mhm,
definitely have that same tagline that reminds the employer of who you are, what your interests are,
mhm.
and yeah. So for example, you can be setting up your own LinkedIn group, or you
Interesting.
can, yeah, you can write your own blog
Mhm,
where you capture the adventure of your career change. So what
mhm,
happened, what were the steps, why did you decide to choose
mhm,
boot camp rather than going back to school for a year or so?
mhm,
Definitely being active online helps
mhm,
our grads so much, like showcasing their projects through LinkedIn, or but at the same time, starting mentoring, and Lighthouse Labs has a program for apprentice mentors, where they not only gain work experience, but also they help other students who are currently enrolled in the programs to
mhm,
help them understand and become better at coding. But it's a repetition for them. They're
mhm,
helping, but at the same time, they can post that experience on LinkedIn. So they do have that experience
mhm.
as well. Yeah, and definitely
Okay.
networking is very, very critical.
So let's just clarify all that. So one of the most important steps is, especially those who are coding and transitioning into a more coding based role, the GitHub is so important. And just like that Git commits that you do that's displayed on your own GitHub profile, I guess that's a signal of your commitment
Mhm.
to learning this stuff. But at times, I've also noticed um, there's quality Gits and there are quality Git pushes, and not so great, some great Git pushes. So there's some folks who push a lot, and you can see that green bar across their whole
Yeah,
profile. Um, One thing I've always advised to my students when committing Git pushes is making sure the different uh, recos that you have, or repositories that you have on your GitHub. When someone clicks on it, it needs to have a proper README page so someone can actually read through what you've done here, and like also showcase some table of contents of like the different or interesting bits that you made all together. Because I think people are more focused on the end product
hmm,
versus like the code, the nitty gritty, and they trust that if the end product works and looks good and you can communicate it effectively within 15 seconds, that's so important versus you just some random code on the internet that probably does work, but you don't polish it enough in on the README, versus thus making employers who go through it may get turned off, or don't want to actually read through the code. And I have a hypothesis that most people don't look through the code because they trust that you can understand it. By having a proper front end or a proper readme describing your project helps out a lot. And this is true on GitHub, but it's also true on, like what you mentioned, having a polished personal website where you can upload all of the different works that you did, or communicate your skills, or you can blog about your blog about stuff or your journey, or create tutorials which can also be shared to your LinkedIn page as well. But speaking of networking now, I used to network in person, in real life. I used to network mainly through conferences or through meetups. I remember when I was back in school, there was tons of like meetups with like various companies, and folks from those companies would come down and talk to students. Then after university, I used to go to like conferences in my city related to the field I want to be in, or even some other random fields that I was just interested in. But those conferences aren't happening anymore in person. And those touch points in real life where we actually have a conversation and make a meaningful connection, that's not there. And it's all transitioned to the internet. We're behind a screen. We don't have the full dimensionality of interaction. How can you build a genuine connection on the internet or like some internet conference? How do you network in this day and age where it's more relied on the internet versus in person?
Yeah, and I do. I agree with you. I miss those days so much, as I am like a high proponent of,
Mhm,
networking in person and meeting people and going through those interesting, networking groups or meetup groups. But to the point that those actually exist online right now, and it's a
mhm,
little bit, and again, it's a little bit different experience to go through those.
mhm,
Definitely, there are career fairs, there are
mhm,
meetup groups that are happening, and it's just like the new realm, which is most of it is on Zoom, or
mhm,
most of it is via different platforms. But what you can do is you can definitely connect with those people who you met on online. Connect with them separately as well. Just ask them for a coffee meeting, which is a video chat, and it kind of feels like you are meeting them in person as well. But definitely, you will need to find some tangible elements
mhm,
to invite them for the coffee chat. And for
mhm,
example, leveraging your LinkedIn is very good, because LinkedIn is also number one recruiter. There's so
mhm,
many there at this point. There are like 20 million open jobs, not
mhm,
only of course in tech sector, but
mhm,
again, how do you connect with people through LinkedIn, and how do you make those meaningful connections?
mhm,
We do teach them. Again, we do have a LinkedIn workshop that students are getting after they graduate. So we do have that specifically to make sure that they can they can meet with people online, how they can connect with people, how they network
mhm,
through LinkedIn. But one of the most important things is that you need to show the person that you have common interest. So why
mhm,
do you want, the most important question that you need to ask, why do you want to connect with that individual? Because
mhm,
then it will boost their interest as well. So
mhm,
for example, if you would like to connect with a CEO of a company, of a
mhm,
startup that just emerged
mhm,
in the last year, you can definitely find something interesting about their product or about their
mhm,
service that they have a comment, as well as share the content and compliment them on that.
mhm,
People are really hungry for those, for feedback, to understand how can
mhm,
they get better and more efficient with their services. So at the same
mhm,
time, if you are looking for a job, it's kind of hidden. So definitely, kind of informational
mhm.
interviewing is also done online right now. Yeah.
So, when you're building this connection, say through LinkedIn, you find someone that's interesting to you that you want to, maybe have a conversation. Uh, you essentially you want to do some research on who they are, what they're doing, and try to make an authentic or genuine message that kind of piques their interest versus just a click connect and add like a quick note. Hey, I met you at this. I heard your talk at this event. Would love to connect. That statement alone is not that meaningful versus
Yeah.
something that you can actually provide value to them, I guess. So you want to have that. You want to try to make more genuine connection. That requires a lot more effort in general when making that initial message.
Yeah.
So can you expand a little bit more on some of the best practices in leveraging LinkedIn?
Yeah, for sure. And what I agree with you is definitely they need to have, most of people, they have their own templates where they
Mhm,
just add a note, which is very
mhm,
generic and it doesn't mean anything for the person
mhm,
who is on the other side
mhm,
of the computer screen. So having that, doing this research, just keeping in mind that that
mhm,
company or that person can be the hiring manager.
Mhm.
So just keeping that in mind, do the research. That will be easier for you to transition into the role if there is an opportunity there. So
Mhm.
always keep in mind, my advice is always keep in mind that that may be your future employer. So
Mhm.
just something that's tangible. Find something for
Mhm.
a conversation to start.
Mhm.
But as I mentioned, definitely LinkedIn is considered to be number one recruiter these days. And if you see
Mhm.
that there are more than 20 million companies listed on the
Yeah.
site. And again, 87% of recruiters or talent acquisition managers or hiring managers, they regularly use LinkedIn. So they
Mhm.
use LinkedIn for, I would say constantly, if not like
Mhm.
they have it open all the time. So LinkedIn should be well branded. So you need to have a well branded profile. So again, that kind of gives the recruiter or the future prospective employer the idea that you are unique. You're not like others, even though you're using the same languages, you're
Mhm.
coding in the same. Definitely. Or for example, if you are in data science, or if you
Mhm.
are like showcase your project or the presentation, how it's not only about data, it's about how creatively you can present that data,
Mhm.
showcase that on LinkedIn. And sometimes we see that people go viral just because they shared what they have done.
Mhm.
Uh,
I
So yeah,
One
yeah.
thing about sharing on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
I think I've noticed this myself in the past year, or at least since March or April of 2020. I found out that LinkedIn became a lot more. People became a lot more vulnerable there. People were just posting more and more genuine content, or just even short content about their experiences on the day, their like whatever project they were doing. I found people became a lot more engaged in LinkedIn versus the the LinkedIn before the pandemic, as people weren't probably using it as much. But I found that now LinkedIn, everyone's on it. The types of messages I see became a lot more interesting to read. Became a lot more genuine, a lot more vulnerable, and I think that's just part of the fact that people are just sharing more. And you don't have to share the most polished version of yourself. You can just share just stuff that you've been doing, and then that's great. Treat it a little bit more like a personal blog, but in a professional sense.
Yeah, I definitely think that it kind of is a substitution of that human connection.
Yeah.
Because when you create something, you definitely want to share it and to see what feedback you get, whether it be like negative feedback or positive, or who is interested in what you have done. And so that's kind of a good way to showcase what you have done to the
Mhm.
public, and not only within your area, or
Mhm.
but also like I would say global,
It's
because
true.
again, the recruiters may be from any part of the world nowadays. Yeah.
That's true. Is there any other platforms besides LinkedIn that Lighthouse Labs suggests that students should get on to kind of brand themselves or connect to other folks?
Well, at this point, I think that connecting with through LinkedIn is number one, but
Mhm.
definitely joining meetup groups. Number
Mhm.
two, joining those hackathons, as well
Mhm.
as there's so many channels on Slack that
Mhm.
they can also connect with some developers, connect with other job
Mhm.
seekers, get some advice on how to approach this company,
Mhm.
and but definitely those are the main ones that right now, and this we're seeing that those are actually working rather
Mhm.
than sending them to again to some other platforms that are not so effective these
Mhm.
days. It may
One
change in a month or
mhm.
so, but right now that's what it is. Yeah.
One platform that got my attention recently, it's called Clubhouse. Have you heard of it?
No, actually not.
It's like a new social network that's getting kind of viral and over the past month or so, but has been existing for a year now, I think, or longer than that. I've been aware of it, but it's been growing in the past month, and I've recently gone on it in the past month, and I've noticed it's not a place to really do so a lot of connection, but it's a great place to get industry insights of different types of speakers. So what the platform does is it's an audio only type of platform. You create these rooms, and speakers will come and join these rooms, and they kind of just speak to other folks in a more like an open forum type of way that's on a digital platform. And the conversations or different types of rooms I find are unique because there's a room in terms of like how to market yourself on LinkedIn, or as a speaker who is a very big in the fintech space, and they'll be on there with other speakers, and it seems to be it's a great place to get ideas and also to understand other speakers in the industry, which is a good way, I think, later on to kind of connect with them afterwards. If you can't really connect with them in a traditional, say, forum or other conferences, I've noticed more and more of these conversations are now taking place on Clubhouse, which is an interesting new platform in itself, and I'm very curious on how that will take off.
Interesting. I will definitely check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, One question about LinkedIn again. How does one best connect to a recruiter versus a hiring manager? Because I think when we try to make these genuine connections, uh, recruiters obviously are folks who are their job is to try to find the best candidate and try to find someone the best person for this role. And I think recruiters at times they can get a bad rap because they either ignore you, or there's some recruiters who feel a little bit shady at times, and some recruiters are very professional. And I've had the full range of experience when working with recruiters, but I know it's their job, and plus they're bombarded with like messages all day every day by folks trying to look for a job, and because they're the first touch point when applying to for the company at least, or when applying to that company, usually you reach out to recruiter versus someone who's like a hiring manager or someone else in the company. My question is, how do we best connect to recruiter? Because I think it's a little bit different versus someone who's a hiring manager or just another employee.
Um, Great question. So, connecting to recruiters can be challenging at times, especially through LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Sometimes you just are better off going through the website. Let's say if
Mhm.
it's a larger recruiter company, just take a look at who is the right recruiter
Mhm.
in terms of who is specializing in technical opportunities or in
Mhm.
and they are definitely for the larger companies. They have separate portfolios. I would
Mhm.
say recruiters sometimes, what I notice personally, are
Mhm.
recruiting for more intermediate to senior talent,
Mhm.
just because the nature of their work. So that's why they may not be so responsive on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
But my suggestion is definitely try and connect with recruiters through LinkedIn. Again, send
Mhm.
them a message, but identify that if they are not the right person
Mhm.
to chat to for in terms of junior opportunities,
Mhm.
because you are a junior and that's kind of visible and that's on your
Mhm.
portfolio, you just are starting, they can let you know who will be in charge of getting hires for junior talent.
Mhm.
So those would be like newer connections.
Mhm.
But at this point, I think so. Let's say if you are, if you just have bootcamp experience and then
Mhm.
you're just working on your some projects and you're just committing to bootcamp to your GitHub, um, my suggestion again is connect with people in the companies that you want to
Mhm.
work with. It may not be the hiring manager, but definitely you should connect with other developers, be it
Mhm.
junior developer, be it product lead, be it senior developer or program manager for those specific products.
Mhm.
Definitely, my suggestion is just go through those, as
Mhm.
you mentioned that the recruiters may not be so responsive.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We mentioned that when we want to connect on LinkedIn to someone who is, not a recruiter, someone we either developer or someone from a meetup, we always want to create a genuine message that kind of adds values versus
Exactly.
the generic message.
Mhm.
But is it different when trying to connect to a recruiter? Should we be a bit more direct with our approach? Be like, hey, recruiter, I'm looking for a specific role, and I've noticed in this company that there's an opening up position for X, Y, and Z, and I think I'm a good candidate, or something along those lines. What is the best way to send the message to a recruiter? What is a tangible tip that you can provide?
Um, so my suggestion is still do your research,
Mm-hmm.
and still like go through the connections of that recruiter and see who is their clientele, because
Mm-hmm.
most of those who were hired definitely are connected with the recruiter by LinkedIn. Talk to
Mm-hmm.
them, but at the same time, you're right. Like with the recruiters, it's a completely different approach. You have to be more direct. You have to just let them know that you're looking for a job and
Mm-hmm.
you need their support or you need their advice.
Mm-hmm.
And again, don't forget to ask if they are not the right person who
Mm-hmm.
they can refer you to.
Okay, that's really good. So, just finishing off with this job searching tips and connecting. I'm based in Toronto. You're based in Vancouver. Is there any differences in the job search between these two cities? I don't know since I've only been exposed to the northeastern job search, and I'm aware that in the United States down south, there's also a different approach when like networking and applying for jobs. But between these two cities, the two major cities in Canada, um, is there any differences?
It's interesting that you asked that because uh, at this point, because the companies that are hiring are
Mhm.
again looking for the best talent, and for many companies it doesn't
Mhm.
matter where the candidates are located, as long as they're flexible, as long as they're
Mhm.
okay working with different
Mhm.
time zones. We are seeing that many, specifically like in Lighthouse Labs, so
Mhm.
our grads are big companies like Deloitte, Accenture,
Mhm.
also Shopify for their internships are open to hire the best talent. They're open to hire individuals from either Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, Vancouver, or Victoria. So at this point, I think because everything um, uh,
Mhm.
yeah, being able to work remotely is something that it's growing the importance for many, many companies and
Mhm.
many professionals for sure. So,
Mhm.
and it opens up more job options for job seekers as well,
Mhm.
more job opportunities. So, right now, again, before it was a little bit different. Like, let's say in 2019, we were seeing that companies in Toronto were vigorously kind of hiring for junior talent. So some of the large companies would hire like 5 to 6 individuals in a
Mhm.
term. And then in Vancouver, it was again lots of hiring, but more small and medium enterprises were
Mhm.
hiring for like a couple. At the same time, there were lots of companies that were going to open large offices in Vancouver, but right now it's all on stall or they're not going to do
Mhm.
that anymore. So again, job search is global now, so there's
Mhm.
not much difference in terms of what you need to do if
Mhm.
you're in Toronto or if you're in
Mhm.
Vancouver or if you're in Calgary. It's open for just the best talent. So
I think
um,
that's what's so great about in today's age is we can work remotely. It works.
mhm,
A lot of the companies who are in the tech field embrace remote working and embrace the idea of, we don't have to look at in our local city, but we can look all around the world. And I'm so grateful that I get to do my job in a remote setting. Makes me really think like, do I want to be in a city?
yeah.
or, or do I want to move into a smaller town that's a little bit quieter or closer to nature? Because I guess at least now in this pandemic world, I live in Toronto. The stuff that brought me to Toronto, like the stores and the shops and like the entertainment, it's not there or accessible anymore, and made me realize, maybe I want to move into a smaller town that's a little bit more closer to nature, so I can
Mhm.
just focus on my work and focus on the other things in life that's more accessible to me, like going out for a hike or doing more outdoorsy things. At least that's a personal thing that I've noticed about myself.
Yeah, and you actually have time for those.
And you have more time for those, yeah.
Yeah.
You just know there's less commute as well.
Yeah.
I don't commute. I used to commute, I think, an hour and a half every day, back and forth, overall, and that adds up. If you think about it, it really does add up. Anyways, let's move on to the Lighthouse Labs career services. Can you elaborate more on it? I know you've mentioned a little bit about what it does and how it is introduced in week 5 of the both of the boot camps. Can you expand a little bit more about the career services and what else it offers post graduation?
Yeah, for sure. My favorite topic. So, definitely, career services is an integrated portion of Lighthouse Labs education.
Mm-hmm.
So, and our goal at with career services is to provide job seekers or
Mm-hmm.
the ones who are still in boot camp and then definitely post boot camp the skills that they need to be job ready. So,
Mm-hmm.
and to be ready to enter the industry that is somewhat new to them or completely new
Mm-hmm.
to them. And so, what we do have specific workshops that are um, basically helping them to work on their resume, which is a very specific topic for developers' resumes or for resumes for
Mm-hmm.
data science. But I can definitely give you some ideas on our what you can expect from career
Mm-hmm.
services. So for all bootcamp students, they do get the introduction to career services, which means we are kind of telling them what they will expect and how we can
Mm-hmm.
support them throughout the boot camp. And then definitely resume workshop that I mentioned to help them build specifically online resume for for the tech world. Interview workshop, again, more ideas on how to be successful with remote interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely all of the bootcamp students will participate in friends and family demo day.
Mm-hmm.
There is another option which is kind of basically career boost for students. So those
Mm-hmm.
are the students who would like to have more career services, and those options are definitely on Lighthouse Labs website. So again,
Mm-hmm.
they would get the career services and the interview and the resume workshop. They will also be participating in employer only demo day, which is a great way to showcase your final projects to the employers. And
Mm-hmm.
that's for the employer only demo day. What we do is
Mm-hmm.
we vigorously promote that to the employers in tech
Mm-hmm.
sector, and not only for those who are looking to hire. There's a one-on-one support and consultations with our career service advisors, and we also work with employers very closely. We continuously, like on a daily basis, we connect with new employers or we re-engage with employers who already hired from us to make sure that we're bridging the gap between the hiring needs of employers and our talented grads. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, we do have post boot camp. We are calling it career readiness boot camp.
Career
So
readiness.
yeah, career readiness boot
I like the
camp.
name.
So they're definitely ready. It's more so we do have workshops that are more specifically targeting like your personal brand, your LinkedIn profile, as well as how to set your goals. Because the first workshop that we have, and I think I love that, because after you graduate from boot camp, after those 12 weeks of constant, very like a constant work with your
Mm-hmm.
teammates, with the instructors, then you wake up after your graduation and you're like, okay, what do I do now? Do I have a routine?
Mm-hmm.
Where do I start my job search? How do I set my goals?
Mm-hmm.
So we do have that workshop that starts
Mm-hmm.
right after boot camp,
Like
where
right
we,
after.
yeah, right after. I mean, next week we give them a weekend
Oh, okay. Okay.
to
Right. So, I mean,
relax.
it starts on the following Tuesday. Is that
Yeah,
what you meant? Oh, wow. That's
yeah,
almost like right after,
yeah,
so that you continue your journey. Oh, that's fantastic.
yeah.
Is it also open to non, Lighthouse Labs alumni or students? Is it also open? Is there any public workshops available?
Unfortunately, those specific, like the post bootcamp, is
Mhm,
just a perk for our grads
mhm,
who go through the bootcamp, and we want to make sure that they are successful with their career choices. So
mhm,
it's not open to public. It's just for
mhm.
Lighthouse Labs grads.
All right, Mary. Well, this is the end of the podcast, and towards the end of the podcast, I've always give my guest 1 minute to talk about anything they want, either words of encouragement or something they're offering. What do you want to say to my audience who are pandemic job hunters right now?
Yeah, I can definitely. I have an interesting way of encouraging our grads.
Mhm,
So my name, and whoever wants to connect with me on LinkedIn after this, you're
mhm,
more than welcome. So my name is spelled Meri. So M stands for motivation. So I would like to motivate our grads, and not only any job seeker. Right now, it's very important. So M for motivation, E for engagement, constant engagement with new people, with new audiences, and R is for resilience. And this has proven to be a very difficult year, and we're seeing more and interesting times to come. So definitely resilience. And I is the impact. And remember, if you are career changers or you have lots of experience, just make sure that one day, whatever you do will impact not only your career or your teammates or your friends and family, but Canadian economy as well. Just remember that. So that's kind of my words of encouragement to your listeners, and I hope everyone is successful in 2021.
You heard it here, folks. Motivation, engagement, resilience, impact. That's what Mary stands for. Thank you so much, Mary. I really appreciate your time being on the show. You gave a lot of good insights. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
This is the end of the show. Thank you for tuning into the Pandemic Job Hunt podcast. As always, I would love to get feedback, so don't hesitate to get in touch through my Twitter at Andrew H. N. Barry or LinkedIn.